She said loudly, "Ugh, I wish I come single. It'd be more fun." I smiled, said, "Let's fix that," and left. 47 missed calls later, she realized her ride was gone, and she was stuck alone with her regret. I'm posting this here because a few friends told me I should, and honestly because I need to get it out somewhere that isn't my own head. So here goes. I'm 30, male, and until recently I was dating Emily, 28, and we'd been together just over a year and a half, long enough that people had started asking about next steps, and short enough that I can now see all the warning signs I brushed off along the way, the kind you only recognize once you're finally free of them, and the night everything. And it was last Saturday at a birthday party that, in hindsight, felt like the universe finally yanking the curtain back and saying, "Okay, you've ignored this long enough." The party was for Ryan, one of Emily's friends from college. One of those guys who never really left the party phase of life, but somehow turned into a career, marketing, social media, brand consulting. Whatever that actually means, the whole group is like that, always talking about connections and vibes and experiences, always out at bars and rooftop lounges, always broke, but somehow always out spending money. And for the record, I'm not judging anyone for that lifestyle. It's just not mine. I work in software. I like structure. I like calm. I like knowing where my money is going, and that difference had been quietly rotting our relationship for months. Emily used to make little comments. Not huge blow-ups, just little jabs disguised as jokes, like how I was kind of boring, or how I never wanted to do anything spontaneous, or how I didn't really fit in with her friends. And I'd laugh it off because that's what you do when you're trying to be the cool boyfriend, the understanding boyfriend, the guy who doesn't get insecure. But every comment stuck somewhere in my chest, even if I didn't admit it at the time. That night, I drove us to the party, my car, my gas, same as always. Emily's lease had ended months earlier, and she decided not to renew because she was basically living with me anyway, which wasn't something we'd formally discussed, but somehow became reality. And she didn't see the point in having her own car either when I could just drive us everywhere, which at the time felt like convenience, and later felt a lot like entitlement. But again, hindsight is brutal that way. The party itself was exactly what I expected. Loud music, crowded living room, drinks flowing, people taking shots and filming stories and talking over each other. And I did my best, grabbed a beer, made small talk, smiled when I was supposed to, stayed close to Emily even though she slowly drifted toward her friends. And around 10 o'clock, she was already a few drinks deep, holding court near the kitchen island, laughing loud, flipping her hair, basking in attention, and I was maybe 15. Feet away talking to Ryan's roommate about football when I heard her voice cut clean through the noise, clear as day, loud enough that there was no pretending it wasn't meant to be heard. "Ugh, I wish I'd come single tonight. It'd be way more fun." The room didn't go silent, but something shifted. Her friends laughed. A couple people glanced at me, and my face went hot in that instant. Not anger at first, just shock, like my brain needed a second to catch up to what my ears had just processed. And I walked over and said quietly, "Hey, can we talk for a second?" And she rolled her eyes and said, "Oh my God, Jake, I'm just joking." And I said, "That didn't really sound like a joke." And she waved her hand and said, "You're being sensitive. Go get another drink or something." And one of her friends, Lauren, laughed and said, "Yeah, Jake, loosen up." And that was a moment something inside me just shut off, not exploded, not snapped, just clicked into this cold, calm clarity that surprised even me. I smiled, not a sarcastic smile, not an angry one, just a small, polite smile, and said, "You're right, you should have come single." And she blinked and said, "What?" And I pulled my keys out of my pocket and said, "Let's fix that, have fun tonight, find your own way home." And her eyes went wide, and she said, "Wait, what are you doing? Are you serious?" And I said, "You heard me." And she said, "Jake, come on, I was kidding." And I said, "Enjoy your night." And I turned around and walked out. I heard her calling after me, heard someone else say my name, but I didn't stop. I got in my car and drove home, and the whole drive my phone buzzed nonstop in the cup holder, vibrating against the plastic, lighting up the dark interior, and I didn't look at it once. When I got home around 10:45, I finally checked my phone and saw 47 missed calls and dozens of texts still coming in, and the progression was almost textbook, starting annoyed, then embarrassed, then apologetic, then panicked, messages like, "Jake, seriously, this isn't funny." Then, "Everyone's asking where you went." Then, "I'm sorry, okay, I was being stupid." Then, "Please come get me." Then, "Lauren left and Ryan is too drunk to drive." then complaints about Uber prices and cancellations, and finally, my phone is dying and some guy offered me a ride, but I don't know him. I'm scared. And I stare at that last message for a long time, longer than I'm proud of, because a part of me felt guilty. But a bigger part of me remembered her laughing while she embarrassed me, remembered months of being treated like an accessory instead of a partner. And I typed one line: "You want to be single tonight? Figure out." And then I turned my phone off and went to bed. I didn't sleep great, but I slept enough. And Sunday morning I turned my phone back on and saw that she had in fact figured out she got a ride home from a neighbor of Ryan's, some girl she barely knew, around 1:30 in the morning, and it cost her $60 in gas money, which she made sure to tell me about as if that was my fault. That afternoon around noon, there was pounding on my door, and I already knew who it was before I even looked to the peephole, and when I opened it, Emily looked rough, makeup smudged, hair messy, same dress from the night before, and she said, "We need to talk." And I said, "I'm not really in the mood." And she said, "Are you serious right now? You abandoned me." And I said, "I left the party you stayed." And she said, "I didn't have a ride." And I said, "You told everyone you wished you came single." And she said, "I was joking." And I said, "Then date someone who finds that funny." And she laughed like I was being dramatic and said, "You're really breaking up with me over a joke." And I said, "I'm breaking up with you because you don't respect me." That was just a final straw. And then the tears started, right on schedule, apologies, promises, telling me she loved me, telling me it wouldn't happen again. And I said, "You're right, it won't, because we're done." And that's when she asked where she was supposed to go, and I realized she genuinely thought that was my problem. She reminded me she'd been staying with me most nights, that her stuff was here, and I pointed out that her stuff was a few outfits and a toothbrush, and she said she gave up her apartment for me. And I told her the truth, that she gave it up because her lease ended and she didn't want to sign a new one, and that I never asked her to move in. And she stared at me like she couldn't believe I wasn't backing down. And eventually she grabbed her things and stormed out, slamming the door so hard it rattled the frame. I didn't feel sad after. Not really. I felt relieved, like I'd been holding my breath for months without realizing it, and finally exhaled. Then Monday came and the messages started from her friends, from Ryan, telling me I was a jerk, that she was devastated, that I was overreacting, that it was just a joke, and I blocked or ignored most of them because I wasn't interested in arguing my right to basic respect. Emily took to Instagram, of course, posting long stories about toxic relationships and emotionally abusive men who abandon you over one mistake, tagged with mental health hashtags. And suddenly I was getting DMs from people asking what happened or straight up calling me names. And I didn't respond because I knew the truth, and more importantly, I knew who had heard it. Her sister, Megan, called and yelled at me about leaving her stranded, and I told her the same thing, that I left at 10, that Emily stayed at a party full of people she knew, and that consequences aren't abuse, and she hung up on me. Midweek, Emily texted from a new number asking about getting her stuff back, listing items like clothes, a hair straightener, a laptop charger, and groceries she claimed to have bought, which amounted to almond milk and yogurt. And I told her she could pick it up Saturday between 2 and 4, that I wasn't a delivery service. And she showed up with Megan and a friend, and I handed the box to Megan and closed the door when Emily tried to push past me. And then she asked about $200 she claimed she'd given me for utilities, which never happened. And when I asked her to show proof, she couldn't, and accused me of being petty. And I said I was being accurate. And that's when she said, "I was your girlfriend. You're supposed to take care of me." And there it was, the whole truth laid bare, and I told her we were done and closed the door. After that, things escalated in ways I honestly couldn't predicted. Fake reviews left on my company's public pages. My boss calling me in and laughing when I explained. Corporate removing them for violations. Emily texted my friends claiming she was homeless because of me. Venmo requests for rent, utilities, gas money, even emotional damages, which I screenshotted and laughed about with my friends, until I got a certified letter from a lawyer demanding money in silence, which my actual lawyer friend told me to throw away. Emily's family showed up at my place one night, yelling through the doorbell camera, demanding I help her, and I told them calmly that her choices weren't my responsibility, and I disconnected the camera and let them yell into nothing. Over the next few weeks, her story unraveled on its own. Friends distanced themselves. Couches ran out. Money ran out. Her job fired her for too many absences, and eventually she moved back in with her parents, who apparently made her pay rent and contribute to groceries, something she hated. And I heard all of this secondhand. Because I wasn't checking on her, I wasn't asking. I was living my life. 5 weeks later. Things are quiet. My apartment feels like mine again. My bank account isn't bleeding. My weekends are calm. I picked up running again. I went on a date with a woman paid for her own coffee and didn't complain once about me not being fun enough. And it felt revolutionary. My therapist says I normalized being taken for granted because it happened gradually. That the party comment wasn't the problem. It was a final straw. And he's right. I ignored red flags because I thought that was compromise. Because I thought that's what relationships were. But there's a difference between compromise and being a doormat. And it took me too long to learn that. Emily really thought I'd come crawling back, that the fear of losing her would outweigh my self-respect. And she was wrong. I'm not the villain in my story, even if I am in hers, and I'm okay with that, because for the first time in a long time, I'm peaceful, and honestly, being alone is pretty great.